Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chinese Contenders. I'm here with Albion and Volamel, and right here we're about to discuss our exciting next match between the one winner, or T1W, and Triple Six Legends. So we're going to have a very exciting match coming up first because T1W could be a title contender this season. Volamel, could you give us a little bit of history behind this team?
T1W, what a fun team to follow. They're the kind of the perennial Chinese style team where they go, I like your meta, that's cool, but we're gonna run quad DPS on Oasis City Center.
Oh.
That's just the kind of vibe you get from them. That's if there was a team to kind of push forward into Overwatch League, this is the kind of style that I was hoping from some of these Chinese, expansion slots. T1W are super, super good. Last season, they're the only team to take Lucky Future to game 5, and they're the only team to actually take maps off of them, barring LGD in their one map in the final. But we'll play reductionist there. For the
Yes.
most part, this was the team going into season 3 that I think was looking to be the standout favorite. But with the way that the meta is shaping up, and I think T1W still has to figure out like their ideal counter comp, and it's this big style clash between them and Team CC, who's actually going to come out. We'll see in week 5, but that's kind of a brief history lesson.
And speaking of Team CC, Albion Triple Six Legend has just gone up against Team CC, who is often thought of as another potential title contender. So they're having quite a difficult first couple of weeks in contenders. Could you talk a little bit about what compositions Triple Six loves to run, and do you think that they'll be able to make a better showing this week?
You are very right, though. Starting off against Team CC and then T1W is pretty much the hardest schedule you can ask for in Chinese contenders right now. So Triple Six Legends, definitely not an easy start to the season, and it did not go well for them last week at all. And this week, unfortunately, I don't really think we can expect it to go much better. They really ran a lot of the kind of Hammond Doomfist Sombra comp, which is really kind of at its core is meant to have a lot of kind of disruption, a lot of interruption from the Sombra, from some of the CC abilities, and it's really powerful against a more traditional kind of Reinhardt 3-3 based composition. But that's not really what we see from T1W. Like Volamel mentioned, T1W kind of does a little bit of their own thing. They're not really sticking to the meta, so that's the kind of composition that maybe won't be super effective this time around for this match, unfortunately. And it's going to be rough. There's no real other way to put it. It's going to be rough for TSL. This is a match that we fully expect them to lose.
Yes, and T1W actually has only lost one player to the Overwatch League from last year's contenders, Crystal, who we all loved watching during Overwatch World Cup. But there is a little bit of a chip on their shoulder as other teams that are often compared to T1W have lost more players going on to the Overwatch League. So, Volamel, are there any particular players you'd like to highlight before we go into this match who might have potential to make it to the next level?
Well, you got to talk about their Doomfist player, Mijia. He's looked at and compared to, depending on the region you're from, kind of a Brandito figure if you're from NA, a Chipsa figure if you're from EU. I don't know anybody that's specifically a Doomfist one trick in Korea, but I'm sure they're out there, and I'm sure you could compare them. This is the flashiest Doomfist player I've seen in a long time. He's a walking highlight reel. Any of the crazy highlight reels you see on YouTube, this guy just does in professional matches sometimes, and it's just a trait to see. So if you do see him in the roster, which again, we'll have to see if Assassin comes in, but he will play Doomfist, and it will be very interesting.
All right. And as we are getting ready to head over to Busan, Albion, I'll let you start off first this time. Do you have a prediction for how this game will end up?
Oh, this is unfortunately going to be another 4-0, and
Oh,
T1W is going to take it clean.
Volamel, is there any hope for maybe a happier ending?
I've been pretty happy with TSL's kind of setup to some fights, but the fundamentals, the crazy unorthodox compositions, I think T1W takes this 4-0, unfortunately.
All right. Well, let's throw this over to our casters. I hold shift and Ryan Central. Take it away, guys. Let's go over to Busan.
Katrina, thank you so very much. On my hold shift, he's Ryan Central, the Dude Squad, coming back at you with some Busan control. And the desk hit it nicely. T1W is one of those teams that we expect to be in the top 2 of this group, potentially going to be a contender for obviously a semifinalist, maybe even beyond. And that Doomfist gameplay should make for an interesting dynamic here on Busan if we do in fact see it here, Ryan.
Chinese chipset, as I've been calling him. Just idle. It's interesting to see how they work around certain plays and competitions like that. We go straight on to Busan, onto the sanctuary part of the map, I believe it's called, the sort of wide open area. So now we're seeing from TSL this go to come with a Reinhardt. T1W actually played double sniper, so this is actually a really interesting strategy. It might be really difficult to get those picks though because he played into some beefy targets, but we are the 0-4 police. We're going to make sure that that doesn't happen for this game.
A very good early sight being shown up from the Hanzo, and a headshot to tote with it. A full around the world goes TSL, and 666 Legend looking to find a way, but TW1 is just happy to sit on the point, just let them rotate around, kind of like moths around a flame. Now they're coming back in towards this big Tycho drum. A nice up and over comes Silver as he gets a nice pile drive, which knocks most players up, but not a lot of confirmed damage as of yet. Finally, they will roll in and look for some extra damage into the backline. It will be DPS and Observo going down first and foremost. That will be enough to get a 6-on-3 situation. The Brigida's left kind of wondering, what do I do? Where do I go? How about back to base for a while? First point gets control for TW1.
As soon as one person goes down in this composition, they all tend to follow through. And now you start to see T1W building up quite a few ultimates. The fact that Silver now has his minefield ready to go as Wrecking Ball says quite a lot. But now we're seeing 666 Legend switching over to something somewhat similar. They're running a Zen instead of Lucio instead of an Ana or Zenyatta. So this T1W comp is so aggressive, but Discord targets on characters, having Wrecking Ball do his thing and roll in, but also the snipers fight from a distance. But as you saw, Mullenrad did spot the Wrecking Ball going through. I believe we do see the Dragon Strike coming through.
Yeah, the Transcendence will be used as well, but the Transcendence actually is trying to get all the way back to the Hammond, but DPS still falls, so all of that used for essentially nothing. A very good zone of the Dragon Strike, even though it didn't find any kills. Keeping the team spread apart was exactly what they wanted. You can see they're leaving the Mini Diva for dessert as they're trying to chase on any more kills, but it looks like that will not happen. Hy-Vee will take down the counterpart of Umbra, and again, now things not looking so great. We're going to be up to about 70% before even a second contest will come through.
And T1W pretty much have all of their ultimates, really. They used Infrasight, they used Dragon Strike, they didn't need to use much more else, but they're winning these fights decisively based on just individual play on its own. And every single time we start to see TSL just staggered as they go in, we see the Sombra go down. That looks like the Zenyatta's in a lot of trouble with Mullenrad pushing the aggression, but it's 85% on the point, so that just means that T1W have to win one more fight. 666 Legend have a sound barrier, an EMP coming up fairly soon, and a Dragon Strike, but that's about it.
And they're running out of time. The clock is going to be the 7th man here for T1W before long. As we do 96%, how about that little cheeky peek? Night God finds himself as the victim of another headshot, and Mullenrad is again finding a couple of clutch shots. Has the Dragon Strike, why not send it back? Wants to try to dodge out on the self-destruct, will do so successfully and take down Sobervo. And looks like with that come numbers and a couple of question marks in chat from DPS as well, as they will get this one 100% to 0.
If anybody could watch over that map and count how many picks we did see TSL get, I think it was less than 5, it felt, with actual engagement kills. They're just going to get themselves together, and when a T1W are running a comp like this, it all comes down to individual play. So a little bit of flexing, I feel, coming out of T1W with this comp. They could have just gone goats in that fashion. But Mullenrad on this Hanzo was a really solid pick, just being able to sort of clean up house on his own. And I guess that's the beauty of new Hanzo, right, is the ability to just get those picks, clear up the point, and go from there. But now we're on Mecha Base, where compositions, as you're sort of seeing in the bottom right, tend to be a little bit more tanky.
Just the agility from Mullenrad there in that replay. Able to sidestep the self-destruct and move on forward to get the last shot on Yagami. And it will be Mecha Base, as you mentioned. We're going to stick with Night God on the Hanzo. We will not see, though, the sniper coming out. Pardon me. It will be the assassin coming out. We'll be using the Widowmaker. So it will be sniper for sniper, though one will have a scope, one will have a bow. It looks like they will kind of posture at each other from opposite sides of the high ground. And booped up, and Night God will find a nice body connection to take down Assassin for a first pick for TSL.
T1W is still going to go in. Silver 3 dies before you can even touch the point. So 666 Legend are now in control. Slowly the 1 winners are going to back out. They're not going to win this one. Lumbra's completely on the aggressive nature. Doesn't have any charge, can't really get any picks or any ult charge, but is definitely going to chase that up. And now we see the Reinhardt Brigade controlling that front door. And we've seen this in the past games that we've casted I Hold Chip. It can be very difficult to break through this.
Yeah, it sure can be, especially when you don't have the ultimates available, but this will be a pretty vanilla fight, and coming right on in will be all of T1W, but they're already taking a lot of damage, and Night God will find the trade once again onto Assassin, and this is not an area, as you try to break into this high ground, that you would assume that the Widow would do very well. DPS will help clean up 2 more, and that, again, little bit of burst poke coming out of Umbra will again send them back to base with something to think about. 40% for TSL.
DPS using the upshutter in that fight. I don't think it really amounted to much. Or maybe, no, he must have used it. Something must have happened there. Didn't just switch onto Reinhardt, so was a nice sort of clear up. I love the fact that the DPS is the main tank in here. Graviton, it does get used, does hold people in place. YB does go down.
And there will be the Transcendence trying to keep everything alive, and finally Assassin able to find the trade onto Night God for the first time, as there was a little bit of payback from Night God's side. The Earthshatter does come down though, and DPS will take down all of those that were stunned. And now just waiting for this Zenyatta to get cleaned up. Will do so rather successfully. A very convincing 72% all of a sudden for TSL.
Well, considering I just mentioned it, DPS used this Earthshatter in this front room and then just used it again, showed how much damage you got to do with that Graviton up. It got a pick on the Brigitte, but not too much. But one good thing is the ability to actually Drag Strike coming through, and that may actually just might have blocked off a team a little bit.
No, but the Maid does come out. A little bit of a switch there for Assassin to try to wild some of this damage away. The Sound Barrier being used for TSL to keep the aggression going forward and keeping this car in overdrive, which it will stay. 98% will likely get to 100, and that staggered pickup onto Illusion will surely spell the end of Mecha Base. We've got ourselves an even 1-1.
I think this is a good sign for TSL to know that their tanky compositions, if played right, can outdo T1W in a lot of cases. But we now go to a much more open map. It's sort of the in-between, right? That I feel if T1W wanted to run the snipers, they can do. Molanran instantly switches over to the Pharah, because you must, at this point, go as TSL. That went really well. Let's do more of that. The only change-up is that they're running a Winston now instead of a Reinhardt. So now they're going to try and take the perks of high ground. T1W going something that's a little bit more anti-goats with the long-range DPS characters, but it might be really difficult to burst down targets fairly quickly. They don't really have the instant damage that TSL might do.
This is a really interesting composition from TSL. It is a 3-3, but it does not have a Reinhardt up front or an Honor, or anyone who really can help give some extra burst healing. As you already see, a lot of damage does funnel into TSL's direction, mostly thanks to that rocket launcher of Molanran, and right up above most of this composition is this far, raining down Hellfire. The Winston wants to go up to try to put some pressure on Assassin, but T1W is vastly in favor of this team fight just based on Hellfires alone, and this the consistent damage. And you can see everyone's trying to sit in this Winston bubble, and it just does not stay up long enough. And now Silver will jump right on in, take down Soberevo, and it looks like this will be the start of what will be a very convincing win, as Molan is able to get himself a very early barrage for 2 kills and a DMAC. Silver will clean up the rest of it, and I gotta get your opinion on this composition from TSL from you, Ryan.
It's a composition that feels like when you're running sort of goats with a Reinhardt, you are very susceptible to this composition that T1W are running now, or some Doomfist, for example, as DPS. So the Winston is kind of more of like a all-purpose goats, I suppose. Like you have an element of being able to contest high ground, for example. Dive in with your Diva, dive into the backline if they're running Zenyatta, just try and split the enemy team up. So the composition that TSL running is good, or supposed to be good, really, against teams that aren't running Reinhardt goats themselves. But right now, the one winner knows how to play this. They did really well to both stall the point and build up a barrage, and now Molanran almost has another one, which shows how much damage he's getting for free. It's free real estate for him.
Absolutely is. Find him on Overstock.com. Barrage gets funneled right into this upper apartment building. It will find the mini diva, but again, we're seeing a very convincing win. And the biggest thing that I'm looking at this from T1W is the simple fact that look how aggressive this far is playing. You mentioned that she's free, but it's not just that she's getting free damage. She's also providing a lot of extra real estate in between the buffer zone between them and where the Widow is stationed. So the Widow is essentially harmless from this dive that could potentially come out from TSL.
And it's difficult for, I would say, DPS on the Winston to dive into the backline to give Wuya a tough time. He's just used Transcendence now. That was the only time that he felt that he was being pressured. And already T1W are going to be winning out this fight. And they've made a good amount of progression, 75% on the point.
And that was just clean. This is when the biggest thing is, you know, TW1, both on Shrine and here in the city center has looked extremely in control. And then you flip back to what TSL had to show on Mecha Base. There's just really clean execution. Both teams just kind of, as they catch momentum, nobody is giving it up.
Really perfect. Just solid play. I think T1W know exactly what they're doing. They have ultimates ready for this next push. TSL need to touch. It's going to be awkward, but Yagami taking up Mullenran might be enough of an opportunity for 666 to get in here.
With that Farah being down, where is the next target? That's what I'm looking at. Silver 3 is already at half HP, wants to keep contesting, but has no supports within sight. And that's going to be even more so the case as will be taken down and the rest of the backline will fall as well. So TSL at the very last second, 99% in overtime, will find themselves a retake and now finally give themselves a potential chance to get some of these ultimates online.
Big change from TSL2. They've gone off of the Brigitte, so it's no longer GOAT. Still triple tank, but not quite the same sort of line now that Rusheng is on Widowmaker to contest. Mullenran, who was on the Farah, now is on Brigitte, and Assassin 2 on the Widowmaker that's been doing so well all map. So now we're seeing some mind games come into play. Mullenran get the first pick onto Night God. Graviton does get used, so it's good, fairly even in this fight.
Looking to chew down the rest of this front line, though, is Umbra will be stunned, and DMAC as well, but the Brigitte also very vulnerable, trying to slap on through, but won't be able to find the damage. DPS able to come on in and find 2 support kills in that exchange, so not bad considering that all they had to use was a Transcendence and a Graviton Surge, so they still have themselves 2 frontline ultimates, essentially, as you will have the Primal Rage and likely the Self-Destruct by the time this next fight breaks out.
The issue is that the one when they don't have an ultimate that's going to be like team wiping, like EMP or Graviton and stuff, or an Earth Shatter, so they need to sort of take the time, but they are being very aggressive on the point. Do get the pick onto Sober Ovo, which is a great name, and again, Silver Frey's been able to sort of get those picks. They're making progression on the point. They've not actually got it completely yet. Actually, it might be TSL winning this one out.
It's pretty close. The exchange is still happening, and Silver finds himself one pick. There are a couple of supports to match up with this front line, but it is DPS and the Primal Rage trying to keep this one in favor. And yeah, a couple of trades back and forth, but the Primal Rage was just too much to handle, and that will be enough for TSL to keep this one back down to 80%. They will have a Transcendence for the defense and now a Doomfist for Night God this time around.
Yeah, used to Graviton, so they want to change to a hero that is always good. Not really focused around an ultimate as such, so now we're into clutch time. Winston dives in, Transcendence comes out. This is going to be the final fight of Busan.
Can T1W exchange this Transcendence and get themselves effective damage at the end of it? It looks like they might. Night God is having a hard time finding an entry to get in. No kills as of yet. The Rocket Punch comes out. We'll push one back, and now he's in the front line. Brigitte is not the target you want, though, and he realizes that, tries to back up. Will take a shield bash to the face, and that will be Wuyar helmet to clean up with one headshot right behind it. Mullenran wants to get him back in with this whip and some Nene, and that will be enough to hit the rally and, of course, get the cleanups from Assassin. There it is. T1W will win it out in narrow fashion, 2-1.
They left it very late. It's nice to see a map not go straight to 2-0 on Busan Art Control at least. So TSL showing signs of life that they can keep up with or even outperform T1W in some cases, especially when it comes down to tanky competition. So it's something that they could take away from this, but T1W looks so flexible in other different areas that it's going to be difficult, I think, for TSL to keep up to pace, but they can do, and they can outperform. So they're showing promise that this is going to be 4-0, which I think is what everybody wants at this point.
I mean, I know that we wanted after yesterday's games, especially. It just kind of felt like we were left hanging from some of these teams, and it looked like it was going to be the start of the same thing. It was 2 maps decidedly going in each favor, and then the last one, well, essentially it did the same thing. It was vastly in T1's favor, and then it was vastly in TSL favor, but T1W will pull out the map win on Control on Busan. We'll move to map 2 here in just a bit, but we're going to throw a quick break, let you all digest that one as we get ready for map number 2 coming up just after this. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the crab rave while we were away. I hold shift Ryan Central, and I hope you like the lights, Ryan. We are headed to Hollywood. Big time, big shows for our hybrid map coming up here next.
Big stars, some of which in China have gone over to sort of LA and Hollywood anyway, but not so much for T1W. Something that the desk said before, and I think it's a really interesting point to make, that with Lucky Future said if gone in China, it's the Game of Thrones of China right now. Who is going to be the next kings or queens of Chinese contenders? So there's an element of like which team could go on and do this. Team CC, Lincoln Esports, LGD are all prime examples, but T1W has always been up there as a team that's only lost one player in Crystal. So their lineup is relatively unchanged. A couple of new faces here or there. So this is, I think, a show of power. We had, on the other side, we had TSL played up against Team CC last week and struggling for the 4-0, so they want to make sure that they can keep up to pace with them too. So T1W starting on the defense with very much this anti-dive, anti-goats comp, again fighting from range. TSL maybe coming out with the Roadhog, but a Resort attack potentially. Not quite sure if they want to play that. Not likely, because I don't see the Orisa coming out spawn, but who knows? Very interesting comp out of TSL here.
Yeah, extremely interesting, and well, we don't often see offensive Orisas, especially with the matchup that we have at the moment, but we'll get a look at it now, see how this one pans up. We'll be under and over. Well, maybe not. They're actually going to go all the way behind here, will TSL, which will force everybody off the high ground of the cafe from T1W. Molinran is happy to back up and take a couple of fadeaway shots, looking like Akeem Olajuwon right here as he's able to thread the needle on a couple of those bodies, and they will be able to hit down the Orisa first and foremost. So, guys, look from TSL, what do you do here is the biggest question. You've lost your shield, you've lost one of your big bodies. It looks like the answer is just back up behind those big double doors and maybe live to fight another day. But how are you going to get your Orisa back here? This is going to be really interesting, Ryan, to see how they try to put this one back. And how about this? Mijia will take down Yagami with a very stray arrow to the face.
It turns into like a zenith of optimism yesterday in Horizon, where you just sort of get stuck and waste so much time there. And the peak potential on T1W now with a Hanzo is so big, excuse me. But I think the composition really, the problem that we saw there was TSL going for this low ground below where Silver is right now with the shield, and sort of just having one area of fire. You've got a Farah and a Hanzo spamming damage at one shield that's in a very concentrated area, so you're going to lose out. Whereas T1W are relatively spread out, they're going to try it again, but the run's kind of caught out, so kind of awkward from TSL. You can kind of see what they're trying to do because T1W don't really have the bodies to put on the point, but they're really struggling with the concentrated fire that's coming out of T1W.
They're doing a really good job utilizing this ult, and oh my goodness, that Dragon Strike goes right through the heart of TSL. Will find Ruchang, and that might be enough just to, again, keep them pushed here. The Dragon Strike in response from Night God will be able to trade out the Ana, so a potential to fight this one still 5-on-5, but going through, they will move right on in. Molinran puts a very awkward barrage and realizes that is not where I want to throw it, and we'll send it all shooting upwards towards the sky. Regardless, it wasn't the sexiest thing we've seen all day, but this kills and the win does go the way of T1W for the second fight.
And TSL are taking so long to build up some of their like main ultimates. I don't think they've had a supercharger yet, for example, on Orisa, but they're going to have to change up their composition. Now they're running just two tanks, just Winston D.Va, but with a Brigitte, now that Night God's going to switch over from Hanzo. But they've already wasted 2.5 minutes on this strategy that just didn't work in their favor at all. And now T1W is so far ahead in ult economy, it's going to be really difficult to take this point from here on out.
It's almost like you're just going to farm up the ults here and get one more good go at it, but it will be the Sound Bearer being utilized for TSL, and they even find Fuya once again, so that might be an opportunity. The Supercharger gets taken down very quickly, but Molinran is the big issue and is still up here for free, being pocketed by the Mercy of Illusion, but I don't think it's making too much of a difference. There was enough pressure from this front line of TSL, and it looks like they will take themselves a second point, and looks like they're actually going to fully take this one, as it will be a delayed stagger on Molinran, and so what didn't look to be a likely scenario for TSL ends up becoming a team fight win for them.
Yeah, really clean, not having the ultimates, not having those opportunities. We did see T1W have to dedicate to what felt like a sound barrier, but the dive onto Wuya to take him out as Ana, now he switched over to Zen because it's a lot better against this TSL running. Really was the difference there. It did look a bit dicey with their dive going in, but Molinran, whilst he wasn't really bothered with by TSL at all, can't contest a point on his own, so he sort of was isolated in orbit around the objective, so TSL could just ignore him. Receiver bomb coming in from both sides, dive again, very aggressive for TSL.
I like this from TSL, though. They see the self-destruct coming out, realizing they've got an advantage in the front line, and will just move right on into the back line of T1W, and they will find both supports, and then as well, the barrage that was let loose by Molinran will not find any success, and it will be just a DMAC and a staggered away kill, at least slightly for Hy-B. And that will be enough for TSL to get a lot of free push. The rally also being utilized to give a little bit of a boost to the health pools.
Molinran decided that he's done killing himself on Farah, decided to go over to the Brigitte instead. If in doubt, bring it out, I suppose is probably the most apt term, but now both teams running fairly similar compositions. I think mirrored, actually. Yeah, exactly. So both teams running comps. It's whoever's going to play it best, but TSL not really ahead in ult economy, but they've got the momentum. But TSL losing the point somewhat, but managing to get those picks.
Night God has really come to life lately. He's not finding himself in the kill feed, but his effective damage has been incredibly well done. And that'll be enough with this damage coming in from the front line combination of DPS as well as Umbra. They will be able to clean up a handful, and that'll be another team fight win for the cost of essentially nothing. The Transcendence was popped in the middle of that fight, so we will be seeing about 1:20 left in this push, but it should touch here pretty soon. And there will be a Dragon Strike thrown out just to siphon away some of this defense. It will be Mijia, though, switching to the Doomfist, will move on in and find a very quick punch right through Umbra, and that will be enough to actually push this offense back, kind of surprisingly.
Bit of whiplash on the payload there coming in from Mihia. We've known this when it comes to the Doomfist, that he's been sort of playing it and been able to perform quite highly on it. It's surprising that we haven't seen it up until now really as much as we may have hoped, but now the payload is in a perfect position for T1W to keep holding this. 666 Legend do have opportunities. They don't have a grab, which is a big loss. So they're just got to try to outwin, try and dive into the backline, but it's so difficult now when you have a Doomfist somewhat pocketed and protected from the high ground. TSL were wishing that they had more time at this point.
Well-timed bubble, though, will block most of that rocket punch damage that does come into DPS, but Uyar will be able to take down Sober of O just to start things off. So 6-on-5 favoring our friendly team in green for T1W, looking to keep this defense alive. Self-destruct comes up and right back down, but it does get bubbled and shielded away, and that will be enough to continue this team fight win. And Silver 3 sees an opening to move on into the backlines. Zenyatta will be able to back up very nicely, though, and take a kill for the trouble. So with 5 seconds left, someone's gonna have to touch. Plenty of time to do so as DPS will dive in, but takes a lot of damage. The discord up from Uyar is good. The Transcendence is also in hand, but I don't gonna even need it. He does a little bit of a 180 just to check to make sure no one's on the point. It is the Lucio being slippery and annoying, but these health pools are not big enough to keep this in contest, as the self-destruct will find the backline of TSL. They'll clean up on top of the point, and this one will be held just before the second checkpoint here on Hollywood.
Sort of a shame the TSL ran that strategy that just didn't work on the first part of Hollywood. They started to get some good forward momentum, but Mijia coming in on the Doomfist was the difference there to really snap T1W out of it and take control of this map yet again. Such a good pick, actually, when you're not going on to that straight away. You have TSL been really close to getting the point right at the end, and then suddenly Doomfist already killing 2 of your backline is the difference there. So TSL have set themselves up quite nicely to be able to try and defend this, but it's certainly not going to be easy. It just felt that they came in at a disadvantage because they had left 2.5, 3 minutes worth of time at that first spawn running this a reset on attack strategy.
It was so strange. After the Orisa got picked, TSL has had no way of running back. They had to wait for the Orisa. They threw up a shield and was just like, run away, run away. Like, there's no way for them to keep there. So very awkward setup for TSL. What are they going to pull out on defense? It looks like DPS will stay on the Orisa. They're going to match that up with a McCree and a Torbjorn coming to fight. So that'll be fun to see the Torbjorn being played for one of the first times here in China, at least that we've seen so far. T1W will have to find a way to respond pretty quickly to this more stationary setup for TSL.
I really like seeing Torb now. I really like seeing new Torb altogether. This strategy is very anti-dive. They need to be careful that they don't get overrun in a similar style to how TSL tried to do it on attack, so they need to be a bit careful of that, because this is a composition that is really good against stuff like Doomfist or Sombra or the Pharah. The compositions that I think we've seen a lot out of T1W so far, but they're going to be running a fairly standard Winston Goats kind of composition. So TSL needs to tread very carefully and not give up any ground for free, because T1W will take an inch, they'll take a mile, kind of thing.
Well, my biggest question is what kind of damage and focus will they put into this turret? How about Runeshang? We'll start things off with Silver as he wanted to dive on in, but will be absolutely turned aside. The fare that he brought to try to pay that toll was not high enough, and it looks like this will be trying to rotate out. Ooh, not quite able to get there. Was Sober or Umbra trying to find those trailing kills. The speed boost from Illusion is good enough to get them away, so it is a lost team fight, but it could have been worse, I guess, as all these things are said and done.
For those wondering why, I guess Night God is putting a turret not in a very open spot, it's probably done no damage. It's there to provide a lot of peel for Yagami, who is pretty much solo spotting at a point. You have Brigitte in there, sure, but really that's just more of like a dive kind of thing. But Yagami does go down. This turret didn't really find the same use as he wanted, so straight away, bit by bit, we start to see TSL falling apart.
It looked like it was going to be a pretty stalwart defense of the upper level of this cafe, but it was turned very quickly around as the healing boost that came out of Illusion was good, and all the damage from the frontliners finally got online. Mijia was nearly full charge by the looks of it and was able to take down the turret plus some more. So that will be point number 1 in rather convincing fashion. There's just one lost team fight for TW1. And TSL now, as they come on through, they will switch over to the Sombra, as we do see it from Night God. Almost actually gets picked there. very narrowly able to escape. It will be a high noon and a self-destruct to potentially start this defense off.
They need to be really careful with how they approach this because they can't just keep losing these fights bit by bit. The aggression coming out of T1W fairly early on, but the hack comes in to just, I guess, keep their attention. So really well played coming out of TSL to just split it apart. High noon 2 and a self-destruct, but isn't going to get much. We are still seeing T1W being very aggressive here.
Not so sure about that combination of self-destruct with high noon. Everyone was already running away from the high noon. The self-destruct came out afterwards, and everyone just found their own cover from T1W. Now they're using it on the counter-attack. They will take down a frontliner, a support, and a damage dealer. So 6-on-3 action. Make that pretty much a 6-on-2, as Umbra was never really in that fight, being D-maxed pretty early. Sombra on the backside will try to be pesky, but that is only a mere nuisance for T1W, who happy to push this payload for free.
They're getting away with quite a lot, and they have some big ultimates ready for this next engagement. Night God just shy of an EMP, which might be the difference here. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to T1W for everything that they have at TSL. There's very little they can do about it.
Love this positioning from Silver. 3 waiting for everyone to come on through, then goes right into the back line for free. While everybody else from T1W starts to look at this more straight out. Reinhardt and Zarya, there are no supports here to keep them alive. What a brilliant play from Silver. Able to sneak onto the back line, take down the Ana and the rest of the supports. The payload will touch exactly where it needs to, and T1W will put themselves up 2-0 here in our second set of week 2, day 2. And Ryan, I think that's more of what we expected from T1W.
I think so, yeah, unfortunately. We did see TSL having sort of shining a light, but I don't feel like it's not so much T1W, they're playing well, but I think that kind of fell into TSL underperforming, wasting a lot of time, and really struggling to use the right compositions in the right manner. So that flexibility that's coming out of T1W is the big difference. The fact that they can seemingly play every strategy under the sun to some level, including what's meta. Whereas I feel like TSL are maybe like a couple of weeks or months behind certain compositions and how to use them. And I think that in itself is the difference.
Well, you had mentioned at the beginning of this game that the way that China was panning out, it might just be like the Game of Thrones. I'm not sure if George R.R. Martin would have appreciated writing a book that looked quite like that, but maybe this is the first chapter of Winds of Winter. Who knows? Let's bring our book club back into it to see what they have to say about this naughty battle between T1W and TSL. We'll go to halftime in the desk. Katrina, take it away for us.
All right, well, it definitely has been a bit like the Red Wedding for this entire matchup. But first of all, let's talk a bit about Hollywood. So, Albion, when we saw that there was an Orisa on attack coming on the side of TSL, I was a bit confused, to be completely honest. I haven't seen Orisa used in that way. And to be completely honest, it wasn't that effective. What's the mindset of using that hero on Hollywood attack?
The short answer is it's a bad mindset. The long answer is basically that retaking space with Orisa or taking space with Orisa in any way is very difficult. Partially for very obvious reasons, like it's a long time until you can move your shield, but also because when the enemy team is defending with Orisa and you're kind of having this shield break war to see who can actually start doing damage to the enemy hero, the Orisa on defense is always going to have placed her shield before you, which means that her second shield cooldown is going to be up before you as well, meaning that you're always behind in the shield war, and it's very difficult to kind of come back in that, especially when you're not actually playing a second DPS and you're trying to play this hog diva to try to get in and take space. You're always going to lose shield break against the Pharah Hanzo on the trade-off. And the reason we used to see Orisa on offense was on payload maps, where the Orisa could get onto the payload, throw her shield there, and becomes a moving barrier, more similar to a Reinhardt. I think if TSL had tried that same attack, maybe with a Reinhardt, do that same pathing, try to go back through security, back through, kind of the back alley into the backside of Cafe and push in with a Reinhardt shield, it could have been much more effective. But trying to make those sort of rotations with Orisa is just bad.
And Volamel, we did see a composition really working out for both teams. Actually, the exact same composition with the Zarya, the Winston, a Brigitte. Why is this composition so effective? What do all of these abilities allow your Winston to do?
Well, with Winston, he is a main tank, right? He is the most mobile main tank outside of Hammond, but we can argue if he fills that main tank role as well as the other kind of Reinhardt Winston. They add that damage mitigation. Hammond is this kind of hybrid between a main tank where he can mitigate for himself, but he kind of leaves his team on an island. So with the Winston and his mobility and his damage mitigation, coupled with the armor packs, the bubbles, he becomes this backline threat. He becomes this very diveable threat where he can, abuse the fact that he can reposition off of a one fight very, very quickly. We saw specifically on Hollywood, you start to see Winston's leap forward to set up and take a lot of space. And they don't even have to engage immediately once the enemy team is starting to recontest the cart. They can wait, they can pressure the back line, they can kind of jump away, they can bubble and separate teams off, which limits healing. He just has so much space. He has so many resources that he can kind of chew up at his disposal and live in that back line for hours, kind of a survivalist mentality.
Yes, and it has been very one-sided, I would say, predominantly in favor of T1W. But the moment where TSL was truly shining was on Mecha base in Busan, and both teams were running the 3-2-1 compositions with 3 supports, 2 tanks, and 1 sniper. So the winning side ended up having a Hanzo, whereas T1W was running Assassin on Widowmaker. Do you think that the Hanzo pick was really the main difference here, or was Assassin not taking up enough space or being as effective as he could be?
I think it's a little bit of both. Realistically, the Hanzo pick is always going to be better in against tank composition, than the Widow, because Storm Arrows is just infinitely more shield pressure, it's infinitely more tank damage than the Widow can put out. And also because Walls is not super useful once the fight actually breaks out, especially compared to Dragon Strike from the Hanzo, and some of those choke points on Mecha base, the Dragon Strikes can be quite effective. And so the pick itself was already kind of rough, but Assassin just over the entire map of Busan was kind of absent. Even once we got later on to downtown, which in theory should be a better Widow map, he wasn't really finding as many kills as we kind of like. And especially on the Mecha base, if he is going to be playing that Widow, he needs to be playing apart from his team. He needs to be playing off angles so he can actually find shots around the enemy Reinhardt shield. Otherwise, the pick doesn't really do all that much against the comp that TSL was running.
I see. And even though Assassin has been a little bit quiet, let's just say, Michia was subbed in for Hollywood, and we did finally see his quite famous Doomfist that you were talking about earlier, Volamel. But we did see a bit more flexibility. We saw him come out with the Hanzo, but it wasn't necessarily as effective as when that Doomfist was released. Do you think this could be potentially a weakness, this DPS role being shared by Assassin and Michia, if they don't continue to really pressure with this Doomfist hero?
I would tend to agree. I think Assassin has shown this week at least that, he is there are some consistency issues with that. And if he is having a bad game, where else can we draw a DPS hero pool from? Because Mija, like you mentioned, has the really all-star Doomfist, but you're so telegraphed that teams can already start to prepare on that. I can see them struggling a little bit in playoffs, with all the preparation time, with an extended series. If they go deep into playoffs, best of 5, best of 7, even, they're gonna run into these same problems where the enemy team already knows you're going to go to the Doomfist. It's your tried and true hero. And while Mija might be good enough to kind of just punch through any kind of counter composition, it's not really setting himself up for success.
Well, we will see if that Doomfist will be going off to space as we are headed over to Horizon Lunar Colony. This is going to be an extremely important map, as TSL was able to have quite the competition against Team CC in last week's matchup on this assault map. So let's take it away to Brian Central and I Hold Shift.
Katrina, thanks so much. Thank you, boys on the desk. Coming back to Horizon Lunar Colony. I don't have any space puns. I'm still stuck in Game of Thrones mode, Ryan. Have you read the books by chance?
Yeah, I've read all of the books. Yeah.
Which is your favorite? Would you say?
Oh, it's a Feast for Crows. Obviously, that's book's not drawn out at all.
No, 0%.
But I think going back on Space Game of Thrones sounds so cool now that I think about it. Look what
Could we maybe we should try to pitch it to George. Hey, I don't know what you're working out with Winds of Winter, but maybe you could do a song for space or something.
Maybe like a talking gorilla and a hamster. Not talking hamster as such, but a hamster in a big mech suit that rolls around like a hamster ball.
I like it.
I think that's the way to go about it, I suppose. But sort of getting back on track. This looks like it could be another sort of like dull chapter in the Feast of Crows as we hype up to some of the big battles in later weeks. But I don't think TSL will count themselves out of it just yet. They seem to be on pace with some aspects of Overwatch, but certainly fall behind in some others. T1W running a strategy that we've seen pretty much every single team that we've casted at least running on this defense. TSL running Dotes, actually, to an extent. They're running this triple dive tank, but straight away Yagami is taken out. They need to be really careful because as soon as Run builds up that Riptire, it's going to be difficult.
And this is, again, TSL, you can't let that happen, and it looks like they are going to immediately switch off the Zen and put themselves on an Ana, which makes me worry a little bit when it comes to defensive ultimates from TSL. If they do end up touching point, where are they going to find the sustain? But that is a question better posed for a later time and date. Meanwhile, T1W, as you mentioned, a very standard defense setup. This is going to be pretty easy free farm for Mullenran, and that's going to be big. Do they dive for this? Do they come in late? Look, they will try to dive. The Diva does get concussion mind away, and Mullenran able to find a punch. A left hook right into the face of Rungche, and it looks like this might be enough for them to turn this one aside. Assassin will be taken down, so an opportunity to fight for the point, but there's just so much damage, and Mullenran putting on a show. Everything coming up explosive as he finds himself 4 kills in this exchange. Looking for more. The Riptire? Question mark? Just to possibly keep this one away, and he finds himself 2. I wasn't sure if it was really needed, but, well, he put a little bit of an exclamation point on that fight.
But it was a really good push in from TSL. They managed to get a couple of picks, but Run was left fairly uncontested, was able to get the follow-up, but also well played by Silver on the Orisa, being able to get those picks and no doubt pull people into place with a halt and control areas. But again, his dive coming in, Rushan taking out straight away, went down early in the final fight as well.
Mullenran again finds an early pick onto the Sombra, who is still sitting at 66% from the EMP. But meanwhile, on point, the rest of this fight goes. The Hulk gets thrown out from Silver, allowing the rest of his team to follow up with some pretty big damage. Night God will be in the Primal Rage, but again, not really finding much besides just a little bit of over-aggressiveness into Assassin's face. Silver still very healthy, will ring the bell of DPS. There will be a handful of trades though on point, and with the respawn proximity, it will actually likely favor the side of TSL, so it looks to be a really solid start. The biggest problem was they only found the Sombra really to get things going. The front line and support lines stayed nice and healthy for TSL, and the sustain was too much. This will be all 3 points going through checkpoint A here pretty quickly, you would imagine. They're going to give it one more go, actually. The minefield being utilized for DPS just to make sure no one else can recontest the point. Not sure how I feel about this from DOW1, but they think it's winnable, even though there's only 3 players here, and they do find themselves a pick. Now Assassin on the Tracer is back, so potential. Now the sound barrier comes through. T1W with such a commit, but it will still not be enough. They've thrown but all of their resources at this defense. The numbers still pan out TSL's way, and they will get themselves checkpoint A.
Only just. That was one hell of a bloody battle for both teams. TSL gonna try and get everybody together to push in quickly, but they used so many ultimates. The one winner really did ring them out in terms of the ult economy that TSL had. They pretty much had everything that was forced to use stuff like EMP and the minefield from TSL. So now the one winner is in a position where this fight, it could either be like 900 IQ, depending on how this next engagement goes, or they completely wasted time and effort, gave too much ult charge in that final push. But right now, Rusha getting picked up to the run might open this up.
But Night God couldn't get himself right back out. It would have been big if he could have saved his life. And now DPS will be chased after, but nobody can match that movement speed of the Rolling Hamster, so they will disengage for a soft reset. Will TSL, very wisely so. That early pick from RuneShake, it kind of makes you wonder a little bit as you're looking at Mullenran as he switches to the Brigida here late into this second point. Maybe you put a little bit of a worry on him of maybe taking and shaking the confidence a little bit.
Only a little bit, because T1W do have the Transcendence ready, so they have something sort of backed up, and you can sense how T1's playing, Awuya is playing this one because the Sombra in the backline. But Silver being able to get those picks so far, even though we've seen T1W on the back foot here, Silver's played tremendously well to keep control of this map.
Yeah, Assassin will try to chase down the Sombra, but has lost track of his opponent, and we'll just back up towards the point. But you saw at that time through TSL wanted to dive again right into the face of T1W, but the shielding with the Brigida being there provides a much more fortified defense, and now Runcheng will be sneaking around the backside. Wants to find an EMP, and that would be enough to potentially shake up this defense, as all three supports have postured themselves on the top right-hand side respectively, and Runcheng sees it and will scout it all the way out. The rest of the team from TSL, which direction do they go? We are is trying to find the spam, and now it comes through. The EMP's good, and they'll be able to find the Transcendence holding. Zenyatta not able to quite get it off. The rally does get popped, but there's just not enough health pool in those shields. Well, maybe there is, as we take a look as Moira and Lucio for TSL do get turned on. DPS now very, very low, and Molan will put one more flail into his spread to take it down. It looked like it was going to be a good setup, but the damage just never really was fully realized somehow from TSL.
It was really difficult to sort of work out where that went wrong. It was such a well-executed play that T1W didn't even have to dedicate the Transcendence, because T1 did, went down very early in that fight, but the likes of Illusion and Mullenrun were able to keep themselves alive. Mullenrun now switching over to Farah, keeping a very close eye to what TSL are running. They decided that the Vegeta isn't worth it anymore, so this free real estate in the air is going to be enough. But Rusha getting to pick up the silver straight away might be enough of an opening if it wasn't for Yagami going down from Mullenrun.
Oh, and the Zarya also very low. One more shot will do it. We'll be able to find it. The concussive blast will be able to pop back Runcheng right into a line of fire that's favorable for Mullenrand, and that will be enough to keep this defense moving for not really all that much. And it looks like with that switch up, Illusion kind of deciding which support he wanted to go to. It was the Mercy initially, and now it's back over to the Yata.
Try to work out what's best for his team. The Mercy maybe not the perfect pick here. TSL on the other self-destruct, they're building stuff up, but again, losing their support straight away. We're seeing like the one winner just completely clean-siding TSL by just taking their supports out the fight straight away. It just means that they can do very little about it. Now they're trying not to feed too many ults, because Mullenrun is very close to getting his barrage almost instantly, like within a minute or so of him being on Farah.
So you're looking at a Sombra and a Farah combination for T1W. If you're TSL, do you switch to something else? Do you give this maybe one good more fight and then immediately try to switch to something else? I mean, at this point, you're kind of running out of time, as we'll kind of let that question simmer for a bit and marinate over here by the hydroponic lamp, as that's the direction TSL will be moving. The Graviton Surge very close to being charged up. One more tick will get it, but it's already too late, as it's a 6-on-4. Sober and Runcheng will be taken down, and Night God will fall. They will get the charges up, so it looks like TSL, we're gonna get the answer to our question. They're gonna probably stick on this and just go for the full ultimate combination that they could possibly have one more fight.
T1, they don't even really need to dedicate too much here. Night God is the only one that has an ultimate to contend this fight with less than 30 seconds on the clock. It just means that T1W, well, TSL can't go around and dilly-dally, ring a rosy around the point like they just did. They need to get onto it straight away. Mullenrun is well prepared for that. Assassin is going to have that information ready to know exactly what direction TSL is going to be going in. So that preemptive strike is going to be there and waiting if TSL aren't careful.
This is looking not great. The barrage used the EMP immediately after, good enough for 3 picks, essentially make that 4, and that will be enough. No ult van. That's unfortunate for Night God. He was holding on for possibly what he was hoping would be the biggest Graviton Surge of his possible Overwatch career. He will take that one back to the next map with him, or at least that's what he would hope he would be able to carry with him. A lot of ultimates being essentially left on base there, and that's not what you want from TSL. They'll get the full first point, but no progress made on the second.
No progress at all. It took a while for them to get the first point too. It was scrappy, but really well played on this defense by T1W, especially Silva and Mullenrun, who seemed to really dictate that first point. But I think when you go into the final bit of overtime, not using 3 ultimates that you had, and one ultimate not quite good for, I think it was DF Shatter, that didn't quite hit as well as DPS wanted to, but also the other 2 ultimates that were left were about to come online were like 95%. So it just took so long for TSL to get set up, and when they built up the ult economy, they just never got to use it. So it felt like this whole room was in the control of T1W, which has been, a perfect start for a defending team. Now we're seeing TSL running that same comp, really. Like, all the teams have been running fairly similar standard stuff, which is interesting why they'd pick this map in the first place in comparison to other 2CP, because we have seen, at least for us, exclusively just Horizon.
Yeah. That's very true. And it does provide a very interesting dynamic, I think, when it comes down to the other assault maps that are in the pool. This one obviously will favor the more DPS kind of, I won't say weird comps because they're not so weird on this map. As the Orisa is not strange, the Junkrats aren't strange, the Widows aren't that strange, but T1W so far have had the higher execution threshold, and they're really showcasing it here against TSL.
T1W just running dive, just the most traditional aspect of dive, into a very anti-dive competition. So this is really a test, I feel, that can T1W just outplay TSL, even though the sort of meta game isn't in their favor. Right now, TSL very much on the back foot. Do get a pick onto Silver, but we do see we should try to line up some of these shots.
Yeah, decent discipline from Runeshang, but there's just not enough there. Assassin on this Tracer is being absolutely as pesky as you need him to be. It's causing a lot of distraction, flipping the tables left and right. We'll find a DMAC onto Umbra, now switch the attention to a very low HP Orisa with no support. And how about a double kill? Make that actually essentially 2.5, as he got all of that D.Va, Mech and Mini included. So it will be 2 ticks, and likely all 3 very quickly for T1W, and TSL will immediately switch over to the Sombra.
I wonder what Assassin gets the pulse bomb and decides that they're going to change over to like a very anti-dive composition. So like that's not so much cocky, but they're very confident in their play that they can just throw away a big ultimate like a pulse bomb in an attempt to run something a bit more slow and gradual, which is quite interesting. They're going to probably perch upon this high ground and just continue to keep the McCree on the high ground to just do some damage and take some space with the high noon. But very interesting strategy coming out of a very slow, conservative competition onto a very aggressive point on the tap.
Umbra will be focused first and foremost. The self-destruct was thrown out just in self-defense, but still taken down, and the shots are connecting really nicely for Assassin. Able to find all of these damages. Oh, but as I said, that Yagami is able to throw a couple of damage orbs right into the face, and now Night God essentially out here for free. Will get some free charge, a couple of hacks, and that'll be enough for TSL to hold this one rather successfully. And I'm interested. This McCree does not seem like something that you would anticipate, especially considering the comp that they're running in against as TSL's running this defense.
I think because they only need a third that they're just going to try and play. They have so much time just to play this, take as much space in a gradual way as possible.
Yeah.
They're already 60% on the high noon. That might be enough to just completely... It either forces TSL to hold aggressively like this, or completely back off, in which case T1W jump on the point like Mulan Run is now. So they're dedicated sub barrier, they've got bodies on the point. It really asks the question if TSL can contest it.
This little mid-range sniper action from Assassin, able to find the headshot on Runeshang, and the Transcendence gets popped, but you know, Yagami, you were the last player left alive for your squad, and he cannot contest for long enough. T1W will find themselves another W, 3 in a row so far, as they will get themselves Horizon Lunar Colony in their pocket.
Well, with any luck, we don't have another 4-0, but I think this is just comprehensive from T1W. TSL have had a hard time so far in Season 3. They have had to play Team CC that, again, are very good at flexing certain strategies, showing their hero pool. T1W, I think, comes in with a sense of furor as well, where they're just so frustrated that maybe they're not being taken as seriously as they'd like to be, with some of the players that they've got off more free than something like LGD or Team CC in a lot of cases when it comes to losing players to the Overwatch League, right? So this is their chance to prove themselves, and I feel that this is a comprehensive win. TSL just need to make sure that they don't continue in freefall for future weeks if we're looking at the big picture.
So, I mean, as you take the perspective of TSL, you know, let's just use our empathetic vibes here and put ourselves in the shoes of the players. You've gone up against what is probably the best team in this group in week 1. Now you're facing up against what is likely the second best team in this group in week 2. You found moments of success, but what are you taking away from these games? I mean, what are you looking for this last escort to pretend? I mean, obviously you want the map, but are there more elements that they could take away as to kind of deem it as being a success against these two juggernauts?
I'd say what strategies have been ran where, like we're seeing very flexible competitions being ran. Like I think in the West for us especially, it's just very much a case of most teams
Right.
will exclusively play Goats Comp or Moats Comp. I've done a pretty good source, even like Overwatch League teams. I think Albion mentioned it at some point, but also I've heard it in a couple of other places that teams are mostly just running those two comps, whereas China is a bit more of a Wild West, a bit more free in terms of what comps they can run. So I guess it's more of a case that TSL could really take a look at what Team CC and T1W ran against them and then go, oh, can we run this against people in our group, such as I believe like they have Zoo to play, the Laboratory. They're wins that I think they could easily get to make sure that they don't get relegated onto Contenders trials, right? So Like that's
Right.
kind of the thing that they need to be aware of, just what's been used where and why, most importantly.
A little bit of a growth when it comes down to finding the progress from week to week, I guess is the best way of phrasing it. But looking for a little bit more progress on Escort. That will be our fourth and final map coming up. We'll go to a quick little break, and we'll be back with the conclusion of our second set of the day when we come back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hold shift here, Ryan Central there, and we are going to go get our kicks on Route 66. Or we're hoping that we're going to be getting our kicks because this one has been a little bit more of a stroll, I think we could say, as far as the amount of excitement we've seen so far. But anything can happen on Escort. That's what we know. Anything can happen, Ryan. Are you ready for it?
Hopefully we get to see more of the map than we're sort of used to. Granted, we did get to see a lot more Dorado yesterday with some of the teams that we were watching, but some struggling to get past the first point, let's be honest. So, like, now we're into sort of Westworld, part of our, like, graphic novel, I suppose it would be. I think T1W has done well to sort of quell any form of tempo that I suppose TSL has been trying to set. I don't think that this is kind of like a Team CC versus Zoo kind of vibe. I don't think that there's much of a void in some of the quality and skill between them. As an example, between some of the teams that are going for the winners of Chinese Contenders versus some that are avidly trying to avoid being relegated back to trials. But TSL really need to sort of prove themselves. To being able to take them out might be enough to separate them from some of the 0 and 8 teams to be 1 and 7. Just might be enough to sort of tip the weights in their favor.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you know, you just want to get yourself through, I think, in these early games. If you can find a couple maps here or there, you have some time to work on it and move your way forward. I think you hit it pretty nicely. It's the fact that there are a lot of other teams that are also working for that progress, and it just kind of comes down to who can make the adjustments and find the successful recipe first and foremost. Yagami will find Hy-Vee, so that is a little bit of success. Assassin in a bit of trouble as well, but Mullen ran again. Do they have an answer for the FAR? This has been the question posed time and time again, and we're not even going to get an answer, seeing as T1W has lost just about all of their frontliners, and then even beyond that, a lot of the support line also have been dropped. So TSL will get a lot of free push just past Big Earls, which will be really nice to set this one off for the offense for TSL.
We're seeing 666 Legends, Sombra just running, Rushan just kept running, didn't even, like, wasn't phased by Mercy running past him, was like, I'm just going to see what else is going on. But Assassin now trying to sort of pick apart the Wrecking Ball, deemed as somewhat of a strong hero. The Coalescence coming out too, so they're clearing it up quite well with a good amount of time, but Mullenrand again back in the air. Not able to completely win this fight on his own, but the barrage does take out Lumber in this engagement. It's looking a bit dicey, but TSL are no longer moving this payload. It is being contested. They just need to clear up as much as they possibly can.
You know, I was going to say something about how this quad DPS with a one-man Wrecking Ball and a solo Mercy was not quite doing the job when it came to defense, and then we saw the explosiveness that is this quad DPS. TSL, though, with the heavy dive comp coming in, we'll try to find the pressure. But the big thing comes down to, where is their target prioritization? Is it strong enough? Assassin seems to have the target prioritization down as 2 headshots will ring true. Looking for the Diva, that would have been an impressive shot, but will not give us the PogChamp play, at least not as of yet. And Rim Chang and the rest of these frontliners will now start to chew apart at these very vulnerable damage dealers. And it looks like, well, I was about to say, it looks like it will be good, as the Coalescence should have been enough to try to sustain, but it's not even going to be enough to keep Yagami alive. So this, again, patience being utilized by Silver 3 has allowed this quad DPS to really shine.
All of these heroes that T1W are running, apart from the 1 support and Wrecking Ball to an extent, so the 4 DPS, don't really want to fight a fair match. They want to fight from distance. They want to take you out before the fight's even started. Yeah. TSL just really struggled to string those picks together. Really didn't. They weren't sure who to focus on, really, and that really showed the fact that it took so long to get those picks. So Rushen is in the backline just trying to find a target, like EMPs, but doesn't get much. DPS managing to get a pick, but very isolated and disconnected here coming out of Team 666 Legend.
Fortunately, there is a Primal Rage for Night God. The barrage will be utilized, but it'll be only enough for the Diva once again, and now turning the attention back to the front line. But there's just too many big bodies, and that's the biggest problem with TSL is, Rumchake threw out an EMP that was probably less than desirable as far as the targets that were made available, but the fact of the matter was there was enough of a follow-up for TSL body-wise to come in and make a good conversion on that play.
Double sniper coming out of TSL2. They're switching up some of their comps to be a little sort of contest, I suppose, Assassin and Wuya, who's doing a pretty good job on hands up for a support player, like being able to keep it going. So now T1W, it opens up this part of the map. They have high ground to work with, EMP comes in, and they've looked very much in control of space. They're dedicating a lot of ultimates.
A lot of ultimates being thrown in just for essentially what is a D-Mech and Runecheg, who's switched over So the Widow will already make his presence felt, looking for another target just a bit outside from the Mercy. DPS has moved over to the Roadhog, looking for a way to possibly pull some of these more airborne heroes away from the skies, but we'll miss the first hook, at least that we've seen. But still, the pressure from all this shrapnel and all these scraps are good enough to keep the pressure at least somewhat remotely into the face of T1W. The minefield will come out for Silver. The Dragons will follow up, but the Transcendence is there, but it was just a bit late. Could not keep the front line alive, and TSL will be trailing away from that engagement.
We're just getting these Dragon Strikes so quickly, so it does ask the question on who is sort of feeding him a good amount of ult charge. DPS now on the Roadhog with no main tank feels a bit of a weird strategy, I suppose. But when you just want to get that pick potential, when you're going up against some of these squishy targets, it might be enough. Silver goes down, but Assassin wins the Widow duel. And other than that, really, Molenrand is in the skies. The snipers don't really seem to be dealing with him very well. Even Roadhog going for the Valiant Hook. It's not really going in the favor of TSL, but they are moving this payload forward slowly but surely.
Molenrand hitting the DPS switch on his mouse and giving us a little pirouette, just trying to avoid potential shots from RuneShang. And this move for TSL feels strange. They say, all right, you want to fight our fire? With fire, we'll come back and we'll just try to build a bigger fire. But the biggest thing for me is you take a look at this quad DPS versus quad DPS. It just kind of, oh, pardon me, just triple DPS for TSL. It just kind of feels like we want to go ahead and toe-to-toe with you, but that has not been the case so far this game. It's been very vastly mechanically in favor of T1W, and this does not feel like a comp that is kind of, exfoliating those cons that T1W has built in their comp.
It's very weird to say the least that this strategy is being run by T1W, but TSL just cannot keep up to pace with it. Like, they have so many targets that are causing so many problems that you got High Beam now with the EMP that they need to be careful of. Wuya has another Dragon Strike, and Assassin is always going to be dangerous. Not to mention Molenrand on the Pharaoh, right? Like, who do you go for? Who's the problem here? It's really good how T1W are able to string all of this together and work concisely as part of the team in such a bizarre, whimsical fashion.
Oh, the EMP comes out really late from High B. It will provide a little bit of a distraction, but with 13 seconds left and numbers for TSL, they're going to still clean this one up. And High B wanted to make a PogChamp play and really put the team in the back, but it will be enough to get this payload through for TSL. And at this point, I mean, I would like to see some kind of a switch. It looks like at least defensively we're to get that from T1W.
Yep, now we're starting to see more of the tanky comp come out. Molenrand from the Pharah to the Brigitte, High B from Sombra to Diva, Wuya from Hanzo to Zenyatta. So Assassin staying on this Widowmaker to try and contest the double snipers that TSL is still running. But you run it onto this point of Route 66 without a shield on the side of TSL. That would tilt enough of the people in my own ranked games. I don't know how TSL are going to be able to manage with this though.
You know, as you say that, I do not want to get a better picture into your ranked games. You're seeing a lot of that. But it will be TSL starting this offense off very nicely, finding themselves 2 supports plus the Diva. So with a little bit of a 6-on-3 action for a small amount of time, they will get a little bit of extra push, and Night God has got himself the high ground, which is really what I'm looking at to be that pinnacle moment when it comes to all this DPS being funneled onto the point. The high ground will be excruciatingly important, and it will be a Dragon Strike coming right through the middle. We'll separate a lot of the team, but right back into it is Silver 3 with a shield, making everyone come right back in. But Night God again finding the better of Assassin, who has not really shown up to the level that we expected. A very safe Transcendence and Resurrection for DPS, who will bring himself into the fight once again. And another kill on his Silver and a Wuya. So now an opportunity. TSL with 8 seconds left, they will have to do this in overtime. Widow on Widow battle. RuneShang, this is the biggest fight of your game so far, and he finds the headshot, but it's not enough for the kill. So he'll try to find a way to contest, but I don't know if anyone's going to be able to touch in time. The Transcendence comes through for Wuya. The pin actually connects to the DPS, and the Dragon Strike just behind it, but it's not enough to find any damage. The self-destruct for TSL to provide some space, now responded by T1W. The numbers have to be good, but he finds Yagami, who was getting close to a Transcendence. DPS is going to pull out the whole hog, able to find Silver, looking for the follow-up with the High B. They will get it. It looks like TSL will finally push it through. We've got ourselves a game.
As soon as this strategy came into an area that was much more narrow, TSL were able to get that focus fire, just have all of this damage thrown in one single direction, as opposed to the second point of Route 66, which is vastly much more open. So as soon as we started to see T1W switch up their comp, that's where they started to get picked apart quite easily. So I'm sure if TSL could play on this part of the map all of the time, they'd have a grand all day. But unfortunately, they now need to defend very open areas of the map where T1W, it's not so much I don't think they weren't taking it as seriously, but certainly running quad DPS wasn't what we've expected so far. So, well, we know that T1W are going to be the team to play that, right? But ultimately, there were probably better strategies in that place. But Night God, the area of control, I suppose, that we saw TSL being able to take the high ground on the top of the truck and being able to see Night God as he is now, just going onto these mad flanks, was enough to win out that map.
The sniper v sniper gameplay that we've seen kind of threaded through these three maps, the first three maps, has typically gone the way of T1W up until we've started to see Night God really pull his weight in these last, we'll say, map and a half, especially on this Hanzo. He's really gotten the better of Assassin lately. Although Runesheng is not really given too much of a battle with this Widow v Widow, it has been Night God coming through and finding a lot of success at distance with the backline DPS. He will be playing the Torbjorn this time defensively. Runesheng will be picking up the scope once again. And for T1W, will they pull out the Doomfist? Yes, they will. Silver will bring it into battle.
Triple DPS with the main tank now going on to Doomfist is interesting to say the least. TSL running the top of defense though, so I'm liking these strategies that are now coming out. Both teams just, I think, relaxing a little bit. The result is over. 666 Legend have lost, so this map seems like a minor consequence. Has a lot to be receded for both teams though, because both are looking to be in playoffs at least, so they do need to take this a little bit more seriously, but these comps are just becoming a little bit more free for them to play. But Assassin getting picked onto Yagami just might be enough to turn this around for
there we go.
They're going to be a bit on.
Again, the caster curse comes through, making us look silly. We say he had not really popped off much. He finds himself 3. Of course, why not? Make me look silly, why don't you, Assassin? Those 3 kills will be the result of what will likely be a successful first push. And if you're TSL, they're making switches still, so I don't see them contesting this. Looks like they're just going to set up for the first choke point here on the second stage here on Route 66.
That's what I mean about this being so open. Like, I'm still not sure about Silver being on the Doomfist, but you have Assassin being able to sort of go in these mild flanks with a Widowmaker, Merlin ran in the sky, and T1W, the rest just sort of stayed on the payload, trucking that along. So Silver just sort of biding his time a little bit, does get hacked, so he needs to be a little bit careful because he is very isolated. But Merlin run out of nowhere, being able to sort of swoop in and save the day a little bit. It's a weird comp from T1W. They're not really looking to go forward and take space, but they are trying to make it sure, like, 666 don't want to be left out in the open.
It's kind of like they're looking for that little bit of a steamroll where they'll just move very slowly, but they will move progressively inch by inch if given the space. And T1 Assassin moving on in, able to find himself another headshot, this time on Runesheng, and he's got the vision on the Sombra nearby, but Umbra will be able to find the trade. The Resurrection did also come out on the Runesheng, so numbers will favor TSL, and they will capitalize nicely, finding the Mercy plus more headshots raining in left and right for Runesheng, making himself noted as far as being able to stand up to what was kind of the bar risen for Assassin earlier on the first stage.
Now T1W are in the same situation that TSL were in earlier. Like, who do they focus? Who do they try and take down? DPS on this Roadhog is doing a surprising amount. It's like they don't really want to play on the Winston. They don't want to be susceptible. They just want to sort of play a very pure competition based around Yagami and DPS on this Roadhog. Just means that I suppose that Widowmaker can't one-shot you. The Doomfist that Silver's been on still hasn't got an ultimate, by the way. Can't really dive into the backline. It's very much put Silver in this position where he's not able to do as much as he wanted. DPS is just the perfect bodyguard that TSL need right now.
Night God, he's been a huge threat, and now holding on to the Double Dragons. What will he be able to find out of that potentially? DPS in a little bit of trouble, but will be boosted up into the whole hog, and the EMP will follow up, but it's a little bit late after that. It will, but a beautiful pull will be up. Mullen ran down, and with that, it will be a 5-on-4 situation. The Resurrection will come out, so it makes it an even fight once again. TSL looking to trade away again, and there'll be a solo grab from Hybe, enough to take down Yagami, but is there enough picks? It looks like the front line of TSL, which is, again, just consisting of the solo Wrecking Ball, will not be able to hold into that, and T1W will roll through and look to capture the second stage.
There might be a contest coming out of TSL considering they've got Hammond there ready and waiting, but the barrage might be enough to just clear up whoever's left on this point. You can see Assassin now with sights, knows who's exactly around. His payload is going to go in and know that the wrecking ball's going to touch. Dies before he can get there. 4 minutes on the clock, ready for this last point to be pushed for T1W.
An inconsequential barrage just used to make sure there was no contest coming out of TSL, so Mullenran, he's wants to trade away and find something different. We'll pull out a Zen. Yeah, very interesting. It looks like a heap of changes coming up for T1W. It will be Silver back onto a more traditional main frontliner of Reinhardt this time, so it will be essentially a Goats, but with a Widow, at least for now. We'll see if Assassin decides to change things up.
I guess because we are still on the Brigade and made some bold chances, they want to keep it the same. Now Assassin changed over to the Sombra, so a bit more used to it, but a bit awkward that T1W has switched over to this kind of composition. Nobody's really on the favorite hero right now, but Yagami going down means that this payload is going to keep moving back. TSL wanted to maybe move away, but the charge comes in from DPS, it gets hacked, it gets cleared. It looks like a full team wipe from TSL who are going down bit by bit.
Not really sure if I approve of that charge from DPS. They had already lost 2, and he was looking to make a play to open things back up, but all that does is provide a lot of extra space and essentially free rally armor coming out for T1W, who will be looking to push this one through with some time on the clock. But it will be a full contest from TSL. Back now is a full 6. The translocate from Assassin, who was low, but a Graviton Surge will hold all this front line in place. Will there be enough to find out the kill? The DPS, he will be boosted up and wants to start slapping on forward. He pulls out an Earth Shatter and is able to find through, but the Transcendence was already popped just before it. It'll keep everybody alive from T1W, and the kills will follow right behind. How fortunate of it was for Mullenran. We talked about how strange it was to see him on Zenyatta, but he comes through with a very well-triggered Transcendence to keep his team alive through the Earth Shatter.
And the big hack that came out of Assassin 2 wasn't an EMP because he literally got it right at the end of that fight, but to be able to make sure that the Reinhardt couldn't follow through, he was burst down almost instantly. So really good target prioritization that came out T1W. Really solid. I think when you're looking at the DPS duos, none so far that I've seen have been better than Assassin and Mullenran. Their hero pool is so diverse and they're able to perform on the biggest heroes in the biggest situation. So some really solid plays coming out of this team. TSL did well to finish the map, came out with some really interesting strategies that T1W weren't really sure how to deal with. It was very much a curveball, but ultimately T1W set the pace. They have 3.5 minutes to the 1 minute that we see out of TSL. Took a while on the second point, but got rolling as soon as we reached the end of the second checkpoint.
And Hy-Vee really did. Again, that was we saw that solo grab come up onto a very stationary Ana, and it may not have been needed necessarily, but his damage was what pushed them through that second stage and what looked to be initially a pretty lopsided team fight. But regardless, T1W, they will be able to come on through and give themselves a bonus 2 minutes and a nearly 30 seconds. TSL will try to set the stage as far as how far will T1W have to go to win potentially this map, but TSL, they'll be coming forward with a little bit more something to stock when it comes to only having a minute. It will be essentially a Ghost with a Sombra, and Runecheng will move on to the back line, but Mullenran, again, this has been the problem. The big thorn in the side of TSL on this Pharah, he's been free for a lot of it, and he's already putting in a lot of damage. Hy-Vee on this Soldier 76 was taken down early in the first part of this map, will not find the same consequence here as he finds himself at least a double kill before he's traded away. But regardless, TSL are left going back to base with just 20 seconds left.
Really solid play out of T1W. They managed to sort of control what TSL wanted to run. Only 20 seconds left on the clock, so in terms of ultimate, it's not going to be ready, and it shows how Runecheng hasn't been able to do as much as he wanted on the Sombra, considering he's only on 30%. Usually we do see Sombras being able to get their ultimates fairly quickly. Again, the Wrecking Ball diving in, there's going to be a lot of damage focused on them. The focus going in onto Hy-Vee, so this might be an opportunity for TSL to move this payload along if T1W want to disengage slightly, but it looks like they want to just press as much as possible.
Mullenran still not really feeling the pressure as of yet. We'll pull out a barrage, but we don't really find much. Fortunately, he gets some value as he found a DMAC and then a couple of rockets into the phase of the Mini Diva. And with those kills and the res coming out onto Silver 3, there will be enough bodies here for T1W to likely clean this one up, no problem, at least we would anticipate. Primal Rage will make things a little bit more medicine, though, and it actually will push the one away off the map. So T1W actually has to back up here, not having the Orisa, who is the solo tank, with only having a Mercy for support. They're going to give up a lot of really what you would anticipate being unnecessary space on their side of things. This very well could beat the checkpoint.
Some really solid space being made from TSL, and as you said, just the one healer. So much pressure put to Illusion, it can't heal everybody at the same time, right? This might be a bit too aggressive coming at TSL. Rishon gets put onto Assassin though. Hybe using the tactical visor, but gets taken out by DPS, so this payload does look like it's going to keep moving ahead, but Mullen Run has barrage ready, decided that it's not worth it. They're going to take an engagement shortly after this payload gets through this checkpoint in an attempt. They have loads of time, so they don't need to worry about too much, but every single inch on this payload matters.
All eyes need to be on Runesheng. He's hit a very clutch EMP to set this team fight off. Hybe will switch off of the soldier to a Sombra of their own. There will be a rally and a sound barrier for TSL, who again are in a little bit of desperation. Up and over to the translocate, but it doesn't really go where Runesheng wanted to go. The EMP will come out, but is it a little bit too late? The sound barrier was used just before the Dragon Strike. Will be enough for Wuya to kind of get some of this backline move forward, but again, there's just not enough of a front line here for T1W, as again, they're just playing the solo Wrecking Ball, who does get taken down early in this fight, and with the self-destruct taken on Mullenram, this is extra space for TSL.
It just doesn't look like there's any synergy coming out T1W. Even their ultimates, they can't really get to work together. They don't have that stuff to string it through, so they have ultimates ready for this push, but it's going to be difficult to get the meaningful kills. Maybe a pick or two from like a Dragon Strike, for example. They do use Infrasight, so they do know that 666 Legend are waiting by the door with this, but Minefield is ready to use, no doubt, sometime soon to try and block off this door.
And we'll be up and over goes DPS. The Minefield being utilized for Silver on the T1W. The Dragons will match up, and there's been a lot of damage found, and with the 6-on-3 situation, Nightgod will try to find some space at the Primal, but all of these mines are causing way too much of an obstacle. And finally, T1W will stop this push, but TSL, they gave themselves more than enough time to hold this for 3.5.
Most definitely. Like, they've set themselves up really nicely for 2.5 minutes on the clock, or 3.5 minutes, sorry, for T1W, but the pace that they ran through the first and halfway through to the second point was enough that it doesn't seem impossible for T1W to come back from this. So maybe the strategies weren't working in their favor. Like T1W, this is from earlier before. This was on their attack. The single grab came through. And Assassin's just been so good at being able to clear up picks and string them together in a fashion that usually you don't see a Widowmaker being able to do. The tempo of the game tends to slow down quite a lot, but Assassin being able to get those picks quickly, and because of that, we're able to keep the time bank in their favor. And that does ask a lot of questions on what TSL want to run on this defense. And it looks like they're going to be running a quad tank, actually. So this is going to be very difficult for T1W to move, but Mulan Ran is going to love the fact that he has more DPS and more damage that he can get out to get his ultimate a lot quicker.
And Runesheng, talk about putting this in your own ballpark. He hit a couple of really nice hooks earlier in the game onto those floating targets of Mullenran and crew. We'll have to do the same again here, and he's feeling confident enough to pull it out and try to set this defense up nice and early. But again, 3.5 minutes to essentially go almost a full 2 stages. A tall task indeed for T1W. Mullenran will see a big flank coming over on the right-hand side of his team, and he will find a lot of extra damage as he floats a little bit outside the lines here, and Assassin will clean up the first pick. And oh goodness, if you're TSL, I think you need to back up if you're at this point. This is a very awkward stage to take this fight. They will find one, but they're going to be picked apart as Assassin is able to find himself 2 headshots, make it a third. Assassin put that away. There are ladies present, able to find those trail kills, and now free push coming for T1W.
Really well played from Assassin, probably the MVP of this series. So many options that the one winner can be running, but it's just this composition at the one. It was a free fight, effectively. 666 Legend wanted to make sure that they could just stall for as much time as possible. And really, when you're looking at the ults on T1W side, none are really going to be decisive. Barrage might be able to get a pick or 2. They're using Infraseat right now, but TSL is still managing to win this fight. Getting a pick onto Illusion, so no more healing on this defense for T1W.
Hybe finally getting some value here as we switch over to his perspective, finding the headshots on an Icon who has been playing the parkour style of Hanzo over here on this more tall rock pillar. The Payload will likely be able to touch here, but I mean, if you're TSL, you've got time to contest this if you want. Pile driven up into the air goes Umbra, and that will actually make it it won't be much of a contest whatsoever, having lost the Hog. Ball-on-ball action here from Silver 3 as well as DPS, although DPS will be taken down very quickly. The Brigida in a very tough spot will not be able to get the healing that is needed. Rune Shang will give this an effort, but the payload will touch, and we will be left with 1 minute and 37 seconds to beat the rest of this progress that TSL had.
Yeah, just over 90 seconds for TSL to try and defend for as long as possible. Lots of ults on the side of T1W though, and they're just scouting out to make sure that there's no sneaky snipers on the defense here for TSL. Need to be careful because now Night God has put a lot of pressure onto Assassin, but Wuya's been doing so well as a support player to be able to keep contesting on the Hanzo. There's just so many picks that are coming through. Resurrect is down for TSL. But Rusha getting a pick onto High B means that they is now an opportunity for TSL to start pushing here. The issue is that their competition isn't particularly high tempo other than the Wrecking Ball.
And Night God will find the Storm Arrow onto Illusion, so potential for TSL to get aggressive here without that Mercy being on the table. Again, that is the only support that T1W is bringing in. Rune Shang, he has really come and met the test of Assassin. It's been very hot and cold, I would say, for Rune Shang, and he's been quiet at times, but he's making his presence felt. Now the mid-air shot will find, but not ahead. And now Night God, he'll be able to trade away Wuyar, and again, with 30 seconds left, you take a look at what T1W has available to potentially push this through. There is a minefield, there is dragons. Need to find an opportunity to get there, and the resurrection's already used. So TSL with an opportunity to find one pick, it will stay that way. If they're looking to push on the Hy-Vee, who will not be able to sprint out of the way of DPS. Will come back forward, and just really good peel for DPS to come back in and trail on these squishy bodies of all the different DPS players. And with Mulren trying to find a way, the minefield not quite as effective as I think he wanted it, but the pile drive might be able to come on through, but it actually equips the edge of the roof. So with numbers, T1W want to move on through, but DPS making life very difficult. The Mercy, it would be a big pick if he could take it down. Not going for the mega health back. Mercy trying to dodge back and forth. Will be able to boost on out. But the payload in overtime, looking for a last-ditch effort to push on forward. And T1W have found a couple of picks, most notably on the mech. And now, without the defense mention, the tactical visor will come out for Hy-Vee. Looking for a way to slip this one down, but it will be met with the Brigida in the face. But the numbers are just too much. T1W will continue to push this one through. The Doomfist get traded, and T1W, they'll hold on to the 4-0. But my goodness, it wasn't without a little bit of drama.
Another 4-0, unfortunately, but it didn't really play like one towards the end, but how much of that was down to T1W putting a lot of emphasis and attitude, I suppose, into that like quad DPS lineup, even when things were looking a little bit grim. They dedicated to it. Maybe they wanted to practice it a little bit more, try it out, see how viable it was. But ultimately, they came out on top. Another 4-0. TSL are going to be hard done by. They managed to do okay in a lot of instances, certainly a lot better than some of the other teams that we saw going up against these Group A giants, I suppose. So very much well played from T1W to keep on going out ahead. TSL can throw a lot of curveballs, which can catch out some teams, but ultimately T1W showed exactly why a lot of people are pinning them for potential Chinese Season 3 Contenders winners.
But it wasn't nearly as divisive as I think we wanted to see out of T1W, but they will still, at the end of the day, keep the 4-map differential and, of course, the set win. That'll be it for Ryan and myself. I hold shift. We'll bring back in Katrina and the boys to wrap this one up for you.
I have no clue how to wrap up that last map. That was one of the most creative maps of Overwatch.
One way to put it.
What word do I even use here? I mean, there was a solo tank Zarya against a solo tank Roadhog. I mean, here, let me try my best here. Volamel. No, I can't even take myself seriously here. What even happened there? Can you two just educate me on what was going on in those players' minds here?
So first, we do, I've mentioned this last week. I mentioned it yesterday. I've mentioned it at the beginning of the broadcast, especially when we were talking about LAP, right? There is this, paradigm shift in China where they're starting to really look at some of the axioms that Overwatch has just been based on. It's like, okay, well, if this map has, a lot of angles and we just have everybody holding an angle, how do teams really approach the point? It adds so much pressure that you're going to be forced onto something you've absolutely never played. And T1W has history playing. They're the team that plays the wonky shit. They're the team that plays the weird stuff. They play these quad DPS comps. We saw it last season. It's so difficult for teams to practice for that. And we saw that in Root.
And I will say there is somewhat of a precedent for this. I mean, just last week, when T1W had already completed the 3-0 and had already locked themselves in for the series, we then see Dorado and Silver 3, their main tank, is suddenly playing Genji and is pulling out Dragon Blades. So T1W definitely makes a habit of doing this, but because it's always map 4 after they already have a 3-0, it kind of feels like they're maybe messing around a little bit because they know they're already locked in for the series win and they can kind of relax a little bit. And it kind of, in a weird way, highlights a lot of the strengths of T1W, where we were looking at some of this stuff earlier on like Horizon, where some of the fights break down a little bit and the mechanics of T1W come out. And especially when TSL at times was deciding to mirror the compositions and they're opting into a mechanics matchup, you're going to lose that against T1W. There are the mechanics team in China right now. They have such skilled players, and Assassin was starting to pop off on the Widowmaker again. The Loran this whole series has been excellent on the Pharah and the Hanzo, and he ended up on Zenyatta. He had even good Transcendence timing on Zenyatta at the end of Route 66 third, and he popped the Transcendence right as DPS hit a big shatter at the end. And it was a very crazy match.
I mean, my mind was completely blown after Route 66, but you did mention Molanran standing out on so many different heroes. His Junkrat on on Horizon Lunar Colony was such a strong play. I believe him and Silver 3 almost held their own on point A. They saved that point on their own after TSL was so close to taking another point. But someone else I would like to mention is Assassin. Now, Valamel, we kind of gave Assassin a bit of a
We did.
talking down.
I'll take that.
Yeah. How do you think he did this half?
Well, in my fridge at the moment, Thanksgiving just wrapped up for us NA folks. And I have some pie in my fridge and it's labeled humble. Um, what a turnaround. When you look at the pregame show, you look at, the first couple maps, Assassin was absolutely one of the quietest I've ever seen, like just wasn't hitting shots, playing in strange positions. And you compare that to after halftime, a completely different person. We saw that in Horizon, actually kind of clutching on a couple tracer picks, and he looked very, very, solid. Tracking was on point, just, diving well with his Winston or Hammond, I think it was. And if Root was just so crazy. The filters off were what do you say? He was popping off. Molan was showing up good. The flex supports or the Zenyatas were amazing all game. Like it was just like that was a viewer's game. Like if you happen to see this live, like tell your friends. That was some Overwatch.
It definitely was. And overall, T1W had a lot to prove with this matchup, even though, yes, they did get that 4-0. It's good to remember that TSL has just played Team CC, one of the biggest competitors for T1W for that #1 spot in Contenders. So it's pretty natural to make a comparison between these two. They've played TSL back to back. Who is coming out on top for you, Albion?
I think that I have to say that T1W looked a little bit better in their series against TSL. We kind of have to scrub that Route 66 a little bit. That got very silly, but especially like you mentioned earlier on when we go back to the 2CP maps, when TSL played against Team CC, they managed to take it to a complete second round. And in fact, CC had to double cap twice in order to secure that win. But we look at Horizon in this series, and it was a very clean 2-1 where I don't believe they actually took even a single tick on the second point. And that's just sort of those differences, especially on a map type like 2CP, where one fight can be that difference, right? Between a full cap or only getting the first point. It is really nice to see that T1W is able to kind of maintain those really kind of clutch fights where on first point, like you mentioned earlier, the Junkrat and Orisa are able to kind of win that fight 2v4, Valerian hanging out like 80 HP and gets dropped to 20, but keeps fragging and gets the tire off to kind of secure that point. That kind of clutch play, I think, will come in handy for them, especially when they have to play CC kind of in the last week of the season.
Yes, that is definitely going to be the match up to watch. I'll be marking my calendar for that. But before we go into our next match, I'd like to ask both of you one last question. Who is your MVP tonight and why?
Yeah, it's hard not to say Molan Run, right? Like his Pharah was really excellent. Like there are a lot of players to kind of choose from. You know, if you're a fan of flexibility, you can look at Silver 3. You know, how many main tanks can you name that can play projectile? How many flex supports have looked as good as the ones that we've seen today? How many projectile players look as good as Molan Run? Like there's a lot of them, but for me, I have to say Molan Run's Pharah. We saw Kami last series, looked very good. Molan Run putting up a like, you know, throwing down the gauntlet, saying, you know what, I see your Pharah, but I'll raise you my own.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Milano is probably the best MVP candidate, but to kind of give something to TSL, I have to say Yagami actually showed up really big as
Yes.
well on the. He was fragging out pretty hard actually, and he was finding picks onto Milano's Farah, funnily enough, managing to pick him out of the sky, and he was staying alive relatively well, especially considering that it was a 4-0 and they were pretty cleanly swept. His positioning was pretty solid, and he did get off the Zenyatta a little bit, and I think he was maybe a little bit weaker on some of the Ana, and I think he was on Brig at one point, if I remember correctly. But specifically on the Zenyatta, he was able to frag surprisingly well, and it was kind of a bright spot for this team that didn't have a whole lot else going on.
Yes, LBN, you actually did steal my pick for MVP as well. You got to give love to your supports. Always endorse them at the end of every match because they go through so much to enable the rest of the team. And both Zenyatas on both sides were very aggressive, excellent transcendence timing. And I suppose we can also throw Molan Ran into that mix too at the end of the day with Route 66. But for now, I think we all need to recover a little bit after that last map. I think the viewers do as well. Let's take a bit of a break and then we'll come back for our last match, of tonight.